We are all collectively and understandably losing our shit over this virus, aren't we? That's scary. It's scary, right? A lot of uncertainty, and a lot of just kind of fear building up, and of course a lot of like fear mongering and misinformation, and people taking advantage of your fear to make sales, and you know, like what, a pack of masks that aren't really going to protect you the way you think they are. On Amazon's going for like $800 right now. You know, and it's totally illegal, by the way. Price gouging, it's totally illegal, and there's lots of herbalists doing price gouging right now too, trying to sell you the cure for the coronavirus. So I thought, after like my inbox, both on Instagram and in YouTube and my personal email and things like that, I've got thousands of messages from people who are concerned and who trust me, and I'm super humbled by that. I will say that I am not a know-all, be-all source of information, and I'm just trying to get through my own illness that is not the coronavirus, and I thought I'd just kind of come on here, say some words about it, give you some information, what I would do personally, things like that. None of this is medical advice. What the fuck I'm doing in a pandemic. But let's just have a conversation like you're sitting here with me on the porch. I'm not gonna lie, I am recovering from like active EBV. Everybody has EBV, whatever. I'm just really tired. I worked myself to death, basically, and so I've got a board back here, so you might see me looking up. I want you to know that's because there's a lot of information and I'm tired, so it's easier for me to, like, I don't necessarily have to look at it, but if, you know, whatever, I'm human. Cheat sheet back there. So I've got it separated in a couple different sections, like what does coronavirus cause, herbal preparedness, food prep, things like that, and we're kind of just going to break it down from there. I decided to do this on an IGTV format or a YouTube, whichever one you're watching this on, for the sake of not getting interrupted in my live videos. Everyone's like, oh, you're being censored. I'm like, no, my internet sucks. I have satellite internet. No one's stopping me from talking about this. It's just, my internet sucks, so going live is kind of tricky. So first of all, what does the coronavirus cause? Now, the coronavirus is actually a pretty common virus. It's not new. It causes things like SARS. It's pretty common in animals. And they cause problems when they can hop over from animals, kind of like how chickens gave people SARS because we kept them in horrible conditions and things like that in China the last time we had a big scare. But mainly coronaviruses attack your upper respiratory, so think your lungs and up in here, but mainly your lungs is the real problem here. So you're going to be usually dealing with a really nasty cold. But for people who are immune compromised, which are really elderly, this is who it poses the biggest threat to. So like if you get this, there's a possibility that could go from a gross cold into viral pneumonia. But some of the symptoms are, you know, having a pretty high fever, a cough, and struggled breathing. And it's no surprise it turns into viral pneumonia or bronchitis or anything upper, because most of the time what happens when these viruses hit us, it's not really the virus that kills us or like makes us really sick so much as it is A, our own immune response, and B, a secondary infection. Such as catching this and it turning into viral pneumonia, which isn't really an infection because it's caused by a virus, but I'm trying to keep this pretty simple here. So, the main thing is, instead of trying to find the one herb or the one thing that keeps the big bad coronavirus away, it's better to think about the symptoms that it causes and what herbal allies or steps we can take to help calm those symptoms down some, even if those symptoms are caused by our own immune system. But again, the people that really need to be on the lookout for this virus, from what we're seeing come out of China and, you know, things that are popping up here and there, is kids. It's not going to be fun. They're going to get, you know, a nasty cold, but the virus, just like SARS, which is also, again, a coronavirus, didn't really have any mortality rate on children unless they were already immune compromised, because they're really young. Really, if you look at it, usually the rates of these viruses, like if you're like 25 and under, the odds are good you're just going to feel like shit for a while. Now, anybody older than that, if you jump from like 26 to like 36, your odds jump up a little bit higher, not feeling so great on it, and then you get into your 40s, into your 50s, and then when you're up into your 60s and you're older and you're elderly, you're really at risk for what this can do to your body and your body's inability to recover from it, because just as we age, our body gets worn down. But also, again, immune compromised means if you've got cancer, if you've got COPD, especially anything lung related, because this is an upper respiratory issue. I would even consider at this point in time, if you have asthma, I would consider you immune compromised for this particular situation, because it is already going to be targeting your lungs. But we don't have to super freak out about this. Alright, and I realize I just stopped talking about what immune compromised stuff is, but if you got an auto, let me backtrack there again. I'm just a human and we're just sitting here talking on a porch and I'm tired. But anything that's going to stop you, like right now, technically I'm immune compromised because I'm dealing with severe burnout and an EBV infection and low vitamin D. And I'm just fucking recovering. I'm recovering from chronic stress, and so I'm definitely immune compromised right now. However, 2 months or 2 years ago, whatever, I'm fine. I'd be scared of it, but I'd not take a lot of huge unnecessary precautions. But we can again start using and making sure that we have certain steps in place for herbal preventatives and herbal treatments and just kind of things we can do to calm our shit down. Okay, let me take a breath here before I tell you that sometimes the most dangerous thing about a natural disaster or a viral outbreak or anything that really scares us is your reaction. Right? Like right now, I'm more concerned about the reaction the public is already having, and we know that by the massive stock market crash and things like that, is already having because of fear, right? And that can just lead to dangerous situations, like stores completely wiped out of everything, people trying to get in there and willing to punch a bitch to get that last bag of whatever, or the thing that they need that they don't want to go without, because unfortunately as a society we do rely on convenience of trucks bringing stuff to the stores constantly, right? So let's see how I'm going to break this down. Let's talk about herbs first. I'm trying to keep myself on track, and then we're going to jump into what we can do to help ourselves feel even more secure. So we know that if it's viral pneumonia, we need to do things that are going to support our lung health. My top 3 choices at the moment for that, for helping repress this virus, and that's key there, repressing the virus and stopping it from replicating, but also supporting our lung function and stopping our immune system from just going gangbusters and fucking murdering us. And that would probably be Reishi, cordyceps, for helping support lung health. But also, both of those are pretty powerful immune. They are immune modulators, stimulators, but they're also not going to stimulate to the point that, you're fucked over. They're going to help really hold down those cytotoxins and things that these viruses are going to be causing and help prevent the replication of it, while also supporting lung health. Another ally that I really love for just lung health, because if you're struggling to breathe, you really need some help with that, and that would be mullein leaf infusions, as well as mullein leaf tincture. I probably would do both personally. And you can buy mullein leaf from pretty much any herb shop you find online. Tinctures, unfortunately, take 6 to 8 weeks to be ready, and so you're going to need to find a fresh mullein leaf tincture. But you're going to make an infusion. Just Google nourishing herbal infusions. Check out my YouTube channel. There's all types of information how to do it. But the main thing with mullein is that you're going to want to make sure that you're straining her well through a cloth, because she has these little hairs on her and she'll irritate your lungs if you don't get those hairs out of the infusion. So basically strain your infusion, which is just a long brewed tea, really well before you drink it. Now, I know a lot of people think that milk is bad for your lung health. They're like, oh, if I have a cold, I shouldn't drink milk. And milk is actually really, really healing and soothing to the lungs. So I like to blend milk, especially if it's whole milk. Raw milk's even better, with your Mullein infusion. And she's going to help open up your airways and help you breathe. And if it's already attacking your sinuses and all that snot's going down in there and you're getting all this congestion, you have a nasty cough, she's also going to help that cough be productive to get that crap out of your lungs, because the more gunk you have in your lungs, the harder it is for you to breathe. And so Mullein is an easy ally to have on hand. She's safe for just about anybody, and it's easy to do. You just need a jar and boiling water and a kitchen scale. And even if you didn't have a kitchen scale to weigh out what you need to make the infusion, you can just put a good amount in that jar and cover it over. It's better than nothing. Shit, even if you're just drinking Mullein tea, I'd prefer infusion because she's got more of medicinal properties pulled out from the hot water process, being allowed to cool. But tea would be okay too, and tincture is good because let's say you're too sick to keep anything down, like if you just can't keep fluids in you, which is scary, right? Because that is kind of how we can get really sick really quick if we're dehydrated. But at least like maybe you're coughing too much and it's making you lose the fluid, or you can't keep anything down because of that cough. You can put this tincture right under your tongue, even if you can't use it, in a little bit of water, which is how I prefer. And she's probably going to help soothe that cough and open up your lungs some. The next thing is fever. So, of course you can have Tylenol on hand, that's an easy solution. But if it's sold out of the store, that's hard and scary, right? But there are quite a few options for fever. Yarrow is a good option for fever. So is Pearly Everlasting, which is Pearly Everlasting. She's pretty good for opening up the sinuses too. So like if you're all congested, she's going to help get all that gunk out. She's going to help you sleep too. Now Yarrow likes to help reduce fever by basically like getting you sweating. She gets you up and going, but she's also got some pretty good antiviral properties, and she's gram-positive she attacks all gram-positive bacteria. There you go. Bacteria is not the same as a viral infection. Antibiotics are not going to help you. Don't start taking fucking amoxicillin or whatever you got laying down, or whatever fish. Some people buy fish antibiotics, and if it's the end of the world situation, yeah, but again, antibiotics don't touch viral infections, so you're kind of just taxing your immune system for no real reason. Another one that would be really good here, and probably my top choice out of the three, would be astragalus root. Now she helps lower fevers because she's thinning your blood, because she's just a natural blood thinner, which means she's good for heart health and all that. But when your blood thins out, your blood moves faster, and then your heat can get off of you quicker. But she's also a fucking powerhouse at attacking viral infections. In fact, if you look into what a lot of the SARS protocol from a lot of pretty well-known herbalists, there's the word I was looking for. If you look into the SARS protocol, a lot of people were using astragalus root. She's really effective at preventing the virus from replicating. She's another good one in that way. But also protecting the cardiovascular system, which is your heart, all your blood vessels from restricting and stuff like that, and helping with lung health too, while knocking down fevers. And I'm giving you all these different options not to try to overwhelm you, but to give you an idea of how you can come up with your own plan. And this is just a handful of stuff. This is just what my tired brain is putting out there for you right now. So the next thing we know is that the shortness of breath, we talked about that. Oh, kidney. She seems to be attacking the kidney distress. Attacking the kidney distress. It'd be cool if a virus was like, hey, I'm actually going to come in your body and help your kidneys function. Oh, shit. It's been a long winter, you guys. So this virus also seems to be attacking the kidneys, and like when the people who are passing away, it's from, inability to breathe and kidney failure. So we can do things to really support our kidney function right now. That would be great. Goldenrod is a good option. She's just going to help keep your kidneys processing, making sure you're drinking enough water. I suspect that part of that attack of the kidneys and issues is because when you have pneumonia, viral pneumonia of any kind, your ability and your desire to intake fluids is just null. right? And so people aren't eating and they aren't drinking, and then your kidneys are struggling, and the virus says, cool, this is a place where we can help further fuck things up. So, simple stimulants for the kidney, not stimulant like forcing it, but supporting it, would be dandelion, as well as goldenrod, and really anything that's going to get you peeing a little bit, and just kind of helping that go. But don't do that unless you're actively taking in water. I don't want you drinking something that's a diuretic or using something that's a diuretic, which means it makes you piss, unless you're able to take in water, because that'll just fuck your shit up a little faster. But, nettle's a good one like that. So I would probably at this point consider anybody who, like, my dad only has one kidney. And he's like, if I get it, I get it. I'm like, fuck, Dad. You only got one kidney, so, like, you're immune compromised in that way, and it's just frustrating. But, another good thing that can help support our kidneys is Cleavers. And Cleavers is a common plant. If you've got garden beds right now that aren't under snow, odds are good there's some popping up right now, because they grow everywhere. And again, I don't know why I said again. I should have said in the comments section here, or the description here. That's the word I was looking for. This fucking video is going great. I'm going to have all this stuff laid out, because I know I'm dumping a lot here, and it's kind of overwhelming. I'm going to have it laid out in a more concise, understandable fucking format. But Cleavers is fantastic for two things. She's going to support your kidney function because she's a little bit of a natural diuretic. Not really super strong. If I was dehydrated, I would still feel comfortable using her on a small basis in tincture form. I just wouldn't use her constantly all day long. If you start peeing more, you need to back off. But another thing that Cleavers, and the main thing that Cleavers is great for, is supporting the lymphatic function, which is basically like the superhighway system of your immune system's superhighway. And we know that SARS and coronaviruses, I know everyone's like, the coronavirus. I'm like, it is a coronavirus. It's not the coronavirus, but these viruses like to attack our lymph nodes, and they're all over our bodies. But I point right here, because you ever get sick and it like swells up right there, right? That's some of your lymph nodes, and these little things in your body are basically sending white blood cells all through you. They're communicating about what the fuck is going on, and what virus is being a dick where, and what things that need to go on. So these viruses like to attack these places and basically take them offline, if it was like a system in your body. I mean, it is a system, but if you were like a computer or some shit, it's going to attack that. That way you can't communicate to the rest of your body, right? So Cleavers is a gentle way to get your lymphatic system up and flowing. And guess what? It's also great at kicking out those nasty viruses and free radicals and shit like that out of your lymph nodes. If I was already sick, like really pretty fucking sick, I would probably step up my game and start using small amounts of poke root. I know a lot of girls are like, yeah, but for me, I don't use really, poisonous plant allies in my healing. I think it's better to help your body's natural systems function the way they're supposed to, and poke root, she's gonna fuck some shit up if you take too much of her. However, she is like the ultimate. She goes into your lymph nodes and she like physically abuses them until they function the way you want them to. Like, she's an abusive spouse. And I hate to say that because I love Poke. I don't hate her. It's just really, really, really important to respect Poke. I'm talking you take one drop. I don't give a fuck if you're a 350-pound man. Start with one drop and work your way up from there, because if you take too much, you're going to start feeling really nauseous and vomiting, and some people get a bit of psychosis and stuff. But she is like, I call her like my end of the world plant ally. Like, she is who I want with me, and I have a gallon jar, and that'll last me. It's literally generational medicine. I will never use it all up. My children will never use it up. My grandkids, great-grandkids. If we're using that all up, we're fucking fighting off like a zombie virus apocalypse. And we're not facing that right now. So I want you to take a breath. Okay? But I would probably pull her out if I got infected, especially because I am immunocompromised right now. So some other gentle allies, you're like, what can I give my kids, right? Elderberry is pretty good as a defense, and you're like, oh, that's just flu and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but the flu kills millions of people a year, and it's killing people right now, and no one's freaking out about it. Because it's not new, we're accustomed to it. But one thing that Elderberry does is she really likes to prevent the replication of viruses and stop these viruses from attaching to our cells. And this is really important because the one thing that these coronaviruses do is they, in a nutshell, they're attaching to cells in your lungs and they're like really freaking them out. And then your body's like, oh my God, fuck, we gotta get this off of there. And so your body starts attacking this cell, but then that starts impairing your ability to breathe. Again, it's very rarely that the virus is what's killing you. It's your own immune system. However, with elderberry, and I know this freaks people out because elderberry is really gentle and you can buy her in gummies for your kids and everyone's like, elderberry, elderberry, elderberry. You need to start taking elderberry before you're sick and at the very latest, right when you get sick, because elderberry, she has this ability to help your body and your lymph nodes and your white blood cells and everything to hyper communicate. So if you're like 5 days into this thing, or a flu or anything else, and you feel like you're going to die, like you are so fucking sick from a fever, you can barely breathe, your shit's getting worse and worse and worse, and you take elderberry, you just gave your immune system a fucking fully automatic weapon, and it now can communicate better, and then it can attack this virus more. And remember the part how I said that your immune system is what's killing you? You want to help your immune system with elderberry before your immune system is already on like, let's fuck some shit up, right? And in that note, how do we stop our immune system from killing us? Well, turkey tail mushroom is pretty good. Most of the medicinal mushrooms are going to help regulate that immune system response, and astragalus root's up in there too, where you want your immune system to be on point, but not so on point that she's willing to take the whole fucking ship down. She's like, whatever, you're faulty, let's just sink into the ground and be done with this. Now, for upper respiratory stuff, you could end up with not viral pneumonia, but you could end up with like bronchitis or just something gross. And another ally that's good for that is usnea. She's a lichen, so she's kind of like a fungus hybrid with algae, and she's actually a really neat symbiotic ally. And she's really, really good at attacking viral infections that are in the lungs. And again, I'm giving you all of these options so you can come up with your own plan or even get curious about looking at other things. You don't need to go out there and like buy all of these things and bring them home to you. You can, and that's okay. But if you have all these different options and you're somewhere, you know, you might be able to find these individual things online or in a local herb shop and things like that. Okay, so that was a bunch of stuff. Right, that was a bunch of stuff. I'm like 23 minutes deep, and I'm like 3 times I've thought to myself, I should probably redo this video. But I think the information is solid. It's a good place to start with. And of course you can add in all other kinds of immune stimulating herbs. You know, some ones that come to mind are tulsi, licorice root, ginseng. But I don't want you to like hurt yourself. I don't want you from fear to be like, I need all the things in my body now. Because remember that even though these are herbal allies, these are plants, and most of the stuff that I talk about is safe, simple, you still fuck yourself up with it. They still have chemical compounds that cause reactions in your body, and you can still do a lot of damage. And if you're on pharmaceutical medication, you need to take a breath, take a moment, and look online to see if it'll interact with something that you're taking. And again, a lot of our fear right now is from not feeling prepared. And I will take a couple seconds to tell you, like, I will admit and, like, out myself as a type of person who, like, gets off on being prepared. You know, like, I grew up pretty poverty-stricken and, like, listening to first-hand accounts of the Great Depression because my parents had me older and things like that. You know, what it was like to, like, have to, like, lose everything and watch babies die and no food. And because of that, you know, I also grew up helping can, like, thousands and thousands of jars of food and stockpile, and because, you know, we as a society have become really comfortable on this stuff. And it's not to make anybody feel horrible, like, we've just become comfortable to the system that allowed us to, right? But now you're trading off those comforts for comfort, right? Like, these comforts of being able to just go to the store, you're, like, kind of freaking out now, because what happens if you get too sick, or people are too sick and you can't go out to public, and oh my god, all the bread is gone, and there's nothing, and there's nothing, and there's nothing, and well, all of a sudden, that comfortability fucked you over, right? So, there are still steps you can take to feel better in that, and the more of a plan you have in place, even if they're little tiny steps here and there, the less you can step out of that fear and get back into logical thinking, right? Your critical thinking skills shut down when you're like, we're gonna die. This is it. We're fucked. We need to run in the mountains, get the kids, quit the job, go, go, go. On that note, I want you to know that you do need to have important conversations, not even just about this, but other things with your family, or your loved ones, or even just with yourself if there's no one else around. Where is your line in the sand? Right? So after you've put all these things in place to say, you know what, it's probably going to be okay if I just have to stay home for a week or so. Even if I get sick, the odds of me dying are pretty slim. Like less than 1%. I'm not immune and compromised. And even if you are immune compromised, don't be scared. It'll still be okay. You just have to self-isolate. But at what point do you say, okay, now I'm not going to be going to the store. Now I'm not going to go to work even though I'll miss out on a paycheck. Now I'm not going to go to the hospital. Now I'm not going to let anybody come over. Now I'm going to take my kids out of school. All these things that will disrupt your life, right? A lot of people can take those steps now, but they might really regret it. Like, am I, like, making sure my stockpile is in place and kind of, like, checking, you know, crossing the T's and dotting the I's? Yeah. But I'm also doing my taxes, and I'm also making sure that I continue to work, because that's my personal livelihood, and I work from home. But, like, I'm not completely ready to burn this motherfucker down yet. Like, we're not going Mad Max. I'm not, like, putting up some type of scary-ass sign in my gate saying I'll shoot you if you come through this motherfucker. We're not to that level yet. I will say that having that line in the sand is important, and it helps you evaluate your reaction. If you are a person who lives with a lot of trauma, raises my hand, you have something called hypervigilance. Like, you assume shit is gonna go wrong. And I was actually talking with my good friend Sarah about this today. Like, at what point in time are we overreacting, or does our hypervigilance, like, save our life? Like, it gives us that edge because we see shit coming. We assume you're a sketchy motherfucker and we don't trust you. Whether it's a person, situation, pandemic, whatever. So, like, if it was a normal weekday and everything was okay, that hypervigilance could fuck me over. It completely alters how I react, decisions I make, the things I do or don't do in life. But at the same time, I have to be careful, just for myself personally, and just think about it for yourself and how this applies to you. I have to be careful not to downplay it. Like, I'm like, oh, that's just trauma behavior. I'll be fine. Like, there is a point in time where you need to find balance, where you're like, should I make sure that I have a week or two worth of food in my house if I can afford it? Or maybe get some little extra herbal allies, you know. What would really happen if I, like, maybe said, I'm not going to work this week? Can I get through that? And will these things help me feel a little bit better? Because I don't want you to be the person who thought some shit was going to go wrong, but you're like, I'm just overreacting, and then, I don't know, how do I put this? I would rather be wrong and prepared than right and unprepared. Alright, that's like my motto in life, and I know that is, like, kind of scary to think about too, but what's the worst case scenario? What happens if you get all these herbal allies and you go to the store and you're making sure that you're buying shelf-stable food, you know, food that you would eat, things that don't go bad, canned food, rice, things that turn into a lot of food, beans, grains, flours, a lot of broth, Pedialyte, all these kinds of things. I'll dive into that a little bit more. What's the worst case scenario if you go buy that stuff right now? What is it? What is the worst case scenario? That you're prepared for the next situation? That you're prepared if you catch a nasty flu strain that comes around, or let's say you go overboard and you buy a lot of food, if you lose your job and you can't afford to eat and now you have food to eat? Right, and so like preparedness isn't really necessarily about thinking the end of the world is coming, it's just being prepared. It's just being prepared. So at no point in time is your preparation unrealistic. Would it have been better if you were prepared? Fuck, is that how that word breaks apart? If you would have been better if you were prepared prior to things going crazy? Yeah, but you want to know a secret in like the prepper community? 90% of people who are preppers have gone through some sort of disaster or something in their personal life or the social life that caused them to become preppers. Yeah, that's some trauma behavior, but they're okay in a situation like this. And you can take it too far and you can react from a place of fear and it can control your life. But you can also step back and say, it's really not that bad of an idea to have the ability to heal myself when the hospitals are overflowing and there's no food on the shelves. But it doesn't matter because I've got a month or two or a couple weeks or however much you can end up, you know, slowly collecting for yourself when you're done, because it's not like you're not going to eat that food, right? On that note, if you are going to rush out to the store, Costco, wherever you can buy bulk things, Walmart, whatever the fuck stores in your area, I want you to sit down and make a list. Okay, so you're going to buy beans. Probably don't buy the beans that you don't like to eat or that you've never tried before, or that you've, you know, just take time to say, okay, when all this blows over and it turns out everybody's okay, do I like black beans? How many pinto beans can I eat? Do I even like rice? Do I know how to bake a loaf of bread? Am I willing to learn right now? And by all means, please buy some flour if you're not gluten intolerant. Or, you know, if you're not, you know, and even if you're gluten intolerant, be serious with yourself about it. Be like, am I fucking celiac or am I just on a trend right now and it kind of gives me a stomach ache? Because I'll tell you right now, this probably isn't going to help anybody be calm. If the world goes to shit because of this virus, and you look at me and say, I can't eat gluten, I'm like, well, you're just going to starve to death. Because if I have to eat gluten and uncomfortably shit myself until I'm used to it again, that's what you got to do. And this totally isn't, I'm just sidetracking here. When I was homeless for a vast majority of my youth. I would run into street kids that were like, oh, I'm a vegan. Bitch, we are flying a sign right now, hoping that the soup kitchen gives us food. You do not get to have personal choice dietary restrictions. But I'll eat the burger. You know, because somebody would come along and give us a sack full of fucking 99-cent burgers from McDonald's or something. That shit is complete trash. But when you're starving, any food is better than no food. So yes, I will eat the burger out while you just eat the fucking completely calorie empty white bread and a pickle. That part's gonna lose me so many followers, and I'm too tired to give a fuck. But I am just saying, try to be realistic about what you're buying when you're shopping. Do you need to buy 200 flats of, like, tomatoes in cans? No, probably not, because you're not going to eat that. Could you buy, 5 or 10 extra cans of this, and oh, I like that, and this is something that I have experience cooking with, and I know how to use. That way, in the middle of some shit going crazy, you're not trying to figure out how to, like, grind wheat for the first time, and how the fuck do I catch a sourdough starter, and oh my Jesus, what do I do with, like, 32 pounds of mung beans? I guess I'm just saying, step into this with a calm head. Right, and again, grains and beans and rice and things and canned food is a good idea. because you don't have to worry about like it going bad really. Well, okay, this is just my prepper stuff leaching out. Brown rice goes bad really fast. You've got like 3 to 6 months to eat it up before it goes rancid. I kind of debate that a little bit, but mainly it's because it sits on the shelf so long before you get it. And so if you're going to buy a large amount of food, also consider the fact that, will it last that long? Like, maybe just buy a couple pounds of brown rice instead of a 55-pound industrial bag. But on a medical level, foods that I would buy would definitely be broth. I'd prefer if you got a high-quality chicken or beef broth, but if you're going to be hardcore, vegan and stuff, which is your choice, vegetable broth is okay. I prefer the animal fats. I prefer the protein, the animal-based protein, because that gives your body energy and the ability to fight off these viruses. But any broth is going to be helpful. If you could make bone broth right now, wouldn't be a bad idea. Even if you freeze it. On that note, odds are good we're not going to lose power or water. You're going to have refrigeration still. This isn't the type of thing that comes in and wipes all that stuff out. But broth is a good idea because if you can't really keep anything else down, I would rather have you drinking broth than plain water. Water is good. Drink some water. But broth has all types of electrolytes and nutrients and minerals, things like that that's going to help your already depleted body. So at least what you are getting in you is replacing what you're losing and or not taking in faster than plain water is. Another thing is unflavored Pedialyte. I love that stuff. I mean, I'm not like, fuck yeah, this tastes so good. Give me a glass of plain Pedialyte. But I don't want you to get the crap that's flavored, because that sugar or all the artificial sweeteners and whatever they use in it is not good for your body. But if it has sugar, and a lot of them do from your flavoring, it's going to cause you to be dehydrated, just like the goddamn Powerade or Gatorade. Yeah, it's got electrolytes, but it's also dehydrating you because of all the sugar in it. Oh, and by the way, sugar is repressing your immune system. So plain Pedialyte. You can, if you got to get your kids to drink it or something, you could mix it with 100% fruit juice. And you can buy that stuff. I don't mean, 100% juice from concentrate. I mean like real juice, and I would still water that juice down so you're not getting, tons of sugar in your body. And that's a great one. And now, maybe if you do have little ones, it's harder. You could cave and get the flavored Pedialyte, like freezer pops, right? And that's good, because if you've got a fever, even as an adult, if you're a big kid, that's okay. I'm not judging. Even if you're a big kid, that will help you reduce your fever and make sure that you're getting electrolytes and stuff like that. I almost said Pedialytes in you. Electrolytes in you. And every time I talk about electrolytes, I don't know if you've watched Idiocracy. You probably should, because at this point it's like a cultural documentary instead of a comedy. But he's like, what's Broth? It's got what plants need. It's got what plants want. Because they were fucking watering their plants with basically Gatorade. Because it had electrolytes in it. Reminds me of that. Every time. A good thing, again, back on the broth subject, is healthy animal fats. Healthy animal fats are going to really help your body have the energy and proteins that they need, and protein's good. But if you had a really high fever, I would still make sure to take in animal fats that were like maybe butters and yogurts, easier things to digest than like, a red meat steak, because as you digest that, it's going to increase your body temperature, because digestion causes that. So the easier something is to digest, and who the fuck is going to be half dying and be like, I'll take a porterhouse? Nobody's doing that. But I guess if that's all you had. But still, healthy animal fats are a really good way to help protect your body and the cells in your body, and to just give your body the strength to fight this stuff. Let's see, what else do I have on this board? Water. You should probably buy a good amount of water just to have on hand. Again, this type of stuff doesn't really stop, like, municipal services. Like, but I guess if it, like, got to the point where, like, nobody could go out, like, in China right now, that like, everyone's self-isolated, no one's allowed to go to work, they probably still have people at, their power plants and shit like that. But if it got, like, super, super bad, it might be to the point where there is nobody to man those stations. And what you probably don't know, or you may know, I'm not trying to say you don't know things. If your power goes out and you live on a municipal water source, you won't have water for very long. Once those pipes lose pressure because there's no more pump pushing it, your water goes away. So having a case or two of water isn't a bad idea. You don't have to go and fucking fill up like 55-gallon barrels unless you plan on being there for like a long time. And by the way, if you do that, your water's gonna go bad. Water does go bad. It goes bad. It just does. What else? Oh, okay. So let's talk about what we can do on like a physical level if like this kind of like comes at us, especially if you live like in a bigger city area. So a lot of people are going and buying those masks, right? They're not a horrible idea. You probably can't find any online that aren't being completely price gouged. You might be able to find some at your Home Depot still. If it gets bad enough, they'll probably, the president, I'm not talking politics here, I'm not pro or against whatever. I'm just nothing. No discussion right now. But he will likely, at least he's supposed to, he declare these companies like make these products that we need, like bodysuits, masks, things like that, and would force them to sell them at the rate they were selling prior to price gouging. You know, like again, it's completely illegal for people to be selling these masks for $300-400 for a pack, and it's completely illegal for herbalists to be saying, buy my $2,000 herbal kit of 5 tinctures and you'll be fine. That's fucked up. It's price gouging. It's super predatory, and it's just a really bad thing. Drifted there. I acknowledge that. But the problem with these masks is that they're not really airtight around your face. Generally, these masks are protecting... Okay, so when a person goes... A doctor. When a surgeon goes into surgery, when a doctor goes into surgery, and they have these masks on their face, they're not protecting themselves from the surgery so much as they're protecting their breath from that. They're preventing bacteria from getting out of their mouth and into whoever they're cutting open for whatever reason. So when you put this mask on, it's cool because if you're sick, you're preventing the spread. And I'm not going to say that's going to not stop some viruses. But the thing is when you breathe, because it's around your face here, but it's not skin tight, right? It's just on your face, especially if it doesn't fit you well. When you breathe, the air still goes under. It's got to be like a real seal. If I was dealing with somebody who is sick with the coronavirus, would I put the mask on? Yeah, but it would be better to put the mask on them, because when they cough, this virus goes into the air and you breathe it in, or it gets in your eyes, whatever. That's how you get sick. We also know that this virus, if they're puking, if they shit themselves and you have to clean it up, everyone's like, now I'm freaked out. That's how you're going to catch it. And that just means you need to be hyper vigilant about sanitation. Making sure that when you're going to work or out and about, you're washing your hands really well. You're paying attention to not touching your face. You don't realize how many thousands of times you're touching your face and all kinds of things throughout the day. And so if you're conscious about it, you're like, I'm not going to touch my face today. You'll notice when you go to do it, and you're like, oh, fuck. And then you can peel your hands, you can itch your face or whatever, but the real big one is when you rub your eyes, touch your mouth, nose, anything like that after you've opened a door, this or that. On that note, right now, you probably couldn't pay me. In fact, you couldn't pay me to go out to eat right now. You couldn't pay me to go into any type of restaurant establishment, especially in bigger cities, because so many people are coming and going. And there are people back there working and touching and this and that, and all their produce are coming from all over. And not even just, I'd go to the store, but I'd be careful. And I don't want to cause fear there. But I guess the reason that I isolated out going out to eat at a restaurant compared to going to the store to get supplies is because generally when you're in the store, you're not like, sandwich. Right, you can be, but you're there to get food to take home that you prepare. Versus going somewhere where you're actively opening a door, touching these things, looking at a menu, picking up this food, and eating it. Because then the viruses and bacteria and whatever are always on your hands, get into your body. I probably would forego to going things like big concerts and public events and things like that as well. Right now, just because when you do self-isolate, you help reduce the curve of the infection. So there's this thing called the R factor. And that's where, like, if I get sick, I'm R1. And if I'm like, hi, Becky, and Becky gets sick, and then somebody else that's there gets sick, that's R2. And then how many people, like if I get sick and I infect 5 people, each one of those people infects 5 people, and goes on and on and on. And so if you aren't in the situation that you can be an R number, you don't add to the pressure of the illness. Because if it does get bad enough, hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. It's going to be a real situation for people to get care. And so if you can take steps to help prevent that and take pressure off of the system, and not to mention not get sick yourself and spread the illness, that helps an already going to be under a lot of pressure medical system if this thing explodes. So hand sanitizers are good. When you do go out, they do not replace soap and water, and sing the happy birthday song with hot water and soap while you're washing your hands. A little bit of this and that and rinsing isn't going to do it. You need hot water, and you need a consistent amount of washing your hands. If you're using Purell, people do this with Purell, right? That's how you put Purell on. Guess what? No Purell got on any of the tips of your fingers. And those are like in your, under your fingernails, whatever. You really want to make sure that you're getting this area of it. And then that's kind of just like a preventative for the things that you're touching before you're going. So let's talk about something a bit more serious. Do you live in an apartment complex? Do you live in an apartment complex where you have central air, where the hot air or cold air is blowing out of a vent in your apartment? If that's the case, you are also breathing your neighbor's air and your other neighbor's air and fucking Jim Bob from like 15 apartments away if it's all in the same building, because it's all one system. They do not have individual little heating units blowing heat through your vents. It's for the whole building. And I know this sucks because it's winter. If somebody in your area has the virus that lives in your apartment, if people are getting sick actively in your area, I would put a sweater on if it's cold, turn my heat off, and even potentially put some tape plastic up around all the vents in your house. You're like, oh, that got so much more extreme when you're telling us not to be scared. But the truth is, viruses, they spread through the air. And this coronavirus definitely spreads through the air. So if your neighbor is sick as fuck, you're not self-isolating if the heat that's blasting in is taking the virus from one apartment to the next. Right? So that's a situation to be aware of. It can be hard. If you have a plug-in heater and you can safely do that, by all means, do that. Cover off your vents. Even if you have to just, like, if it's really cold where you're at still, if you're still in a really northern climate, consider saying, okay, guys, kids, family, whatever, we're mainly going to hang out in this room to stay warm because this is where the little heater is. Usually a little space heater can at least keep one bedroom pretty warm, even while the rest of the apartment is cold. And so that is better than getting sick because it's blowing through your vents. You know how I talked about that line in the sand about where you ask yourself, like, when do we self-isolate? That really does have to be your decision. My personal choice to self-isolate is when the virus is within 200 miles of my home. That seems extreme, right? You're like, that's a long ways away. It's a long ways away for a human. It's not a long ways away for a highway that people drive on all the time. Like, if we were walking it would suck, but it's not a long way for somebody going down the highway who's sick, who stops at a rest stop, who stops at a local Denny's, who then a local person goes, and blah, blah, blah. These viruses spread pretty quick. I would probably at that point, especially because and my son is immune compromised right now, I would pull my daughter out of school at that point. But I'll also stop allowing people to come over. It is good to help people in your community when you can. If you have the financial ability to make sure that you have supplies and your neighbor has supplies, you're a really good person. And that's a step that you can take for your community. If everybody is really sick, this is the part that people are going to be like, oh, you're a fucking monster. I am not helping you. If I have children and I have compromised health and people are dropping around me, that's where that line comes in. When do you say, I don't care if you knock on my door, I can't open the door for you? And I know that's fucked up. Like, maybe if they had, like, a baby, things like that. But I know that's extreme level, but let's just be also realistic. If people are going to be coming and going from your house a lot, you could have a note on the door that says, please call me. I'm not just going to open the door. I need to know, like, anybody around you been sick? are you sick right now? Because the thing that is a little bit scary about this virus is it has about a 14-day incubation period. And they can't quite tell 100%, but it sounds more likely than not that people are contagious when they are incubating this virus, which isn't necessarily normal. And there's the fact that people can be carriers without any symptoms. Fuck! So that makes it tough because, like, if I cough on you, Becky, if your name is Becky, I'm sorry, that's just like my default name I go to. If I cough on you and I don't know that I'm sick, and you're like, okay, cool, oh, here, have, share this, that, I'm in your house, and I don't know that I'm sick, and you don't know that I'm sick, I just got you sick, and you won't know it for 14 days. That's actually kind of hard to see the R factor in that too, right? Remember that thing I talked about, like who infects who? Because do you remember who you saw 14 days ago? So it's kind of hard to ask a person, in the past 14 days, have you potentially been around anybody that in their past 14 days has potentially been around anybody in their past 14 days, and so on, who was actively contagious? Oh, but you can be actively contagious and not know it. So that's the thing about this virus that makes me the most nervous personally. And that's why I'm like, I'm not answering my door for you if this shit gets really bad. Because even if you're like, I'm fine, you don't necessarily know that, right? You could be on day 1 of being infected, you could be 2 days away from being really ill, but no matter what, from that day to this day, that person's contagious. And so, that's a moral thing that you will have to, like, really evaluate for yourself. I will say that having been a prepper for a good long time in my life, and being on particular survival boards where people like have these discussions, there are a lot of people that have these lines in the sands, and you would be surprised how many of them are medical workers. There's a lot of, I would say that a huge portion of medical doctors and such are very well prepared people, and they think about this kind of stuff, and they have a line in the sand of when they're going to stop showing up to help. I've seen people that are so virtuous that they say they will work until they die. Awesome. I'm not cool. But also, I've seen a lot of them who say, I'm the fuck out of here with my family to my cabin up in the mountain, and the first sign of a bad thing, right? Like, if we can't get it under control, we're fucking gone. And to an extent, I understand. Like, even if you're like, oh, you're a fucking monster right now, would you feel that way if you had 2 kids with you? Would you feel that way if, like, your getting ill might, like, cause death because you're immune compromised? Like, where do you lose that moral high ground when it comes to your own personal survival? So I don't know if any of this has been helpful or not. And I know I've been talking for almost an hour, and, like, I'm not sure how many people watched this all the way. So just to recap, the coronavirus probably is going to hit people who are immune compromised. Think cancer, AIDS, COPD, fuck. Anything that really, like if you're chronic Lyme, if you're chronic this or chronic that, like anything that's already actively attacking your immune system, even if it's your own immune system from like an autoimmune, if it's too high or too low or whatever you're dealing with, that virus will use that as like a backdoor into your body, right? Cool. We're already here. Somebody like this thing we're dealing with like came and was like, fuck yeah, pried open the door for the virus to come in, right? Or if you're older, you're more at risk. Definitely the elderly. Although it doesn't, probably people that will be safest are probably like 5 to 20, right? But if you've got toddlers and infants, that's going to be pretty rough on them. But again, the main thing is viral pneumonia, fever, hard time breathing, which comes with the pneumonia, and a little bit of unhappy kidney, right? And so, again, I want you to remember, instead of trying to find the one herb or the one thing that will attack this virus, look at ways that you can support the symptoms of the illness, right? And help your immune system regulate itself so it doesn't go overboard. And there's no shame if you're like, I don't know how to use herbs, but I have a horrible fever, and if you're like, even if you're using herbs and they're helping your fever, take some fucking Tylenol. Seriously, do something to help pull your fever down. I should mention, again, all over the place, and I acknowledge it, if you are on medications and you can get an extra prescription, might not be a bad idea. Because if you're isolating, there's a word I know now. If you're self-isolating, it's going to suck trying to go to the pharmacy where everybody's already sick, especially if they are going to give out medications for this or whatever comes and happens, and they're working on a vaccine in Israel and things like that. You don't really want to go to the epicenter of like where the illness is, right? But also, you don't necessarily want to run out because, like, let's say like shipments get delayed. That's a problem. So if you can do that, that's a good idea. And that's a good idea in general, because like, what if you like lose your insurance and it'll take you a while to save up money before you can pay out of pocket for this absolutely probably ridiculously overpriced prescription without insurance. So that's one of those, just being prepared because it's a good idea, not necessarily because there's a virus that's scaring everybody. So you can find these herbs, you can make sure that you have food and water, you can use whatever you have at your disposal. You can get these masks, just don't think that they're foolproof. You can maybe avoid going out into really active public spaces. You can ask yourself, am I needing to burn everything down, tell my job to fuck off and not go and take my kids this and do that? Or am I like super overreacting because I'm watching news and on Facebook 24/7 and reading all this fake information and I'm absolutely terrified, right? So not to say that we shouldn't be prepared and evaluate these things, but it's also a good idea to evaluate where your reaction is coming from and how you can find balance in that. Alright, so that is my rant on the fucking coronavirus. I don't know, I'm really tired, and I'm like, son of a bitch, it has been such a long, hard winter. We just moved in here in November after like 2 years of me pushing my body to death, and in the last 6 months I was basically living in a tent because the house I was in had collapsed and mold and I still had to just like work myself to death to get here, and then I got here, and that working to myself to death caused a medical crisis, because like my cortisol levels and all this shit, and I'm like, I was just starting to feel better, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be spring soon and I'll be able to I'm feeling better, and we're all gonna die from a virus. We're not gonna be completely wiped out by this. This isn't the Black Plague. Are some people gonna get sick? Yeah. Is it gonna suck? Yeah. Are some people gonna die? Yeah. But that was already happening from the flu. And of course we can take all these steps and do all these things, but let's just think about it rationally and get steps in place and things in place that help us feel a little bit more secure, and I'll end by saying, most of the panic that people are feeling, again, just to say it again, is because you feel unprepared. So it's okay to take some steps to be prepared. Even if you can't do all these steps, even just a few would probably help you feel a little bit better. And then if you pass on this information. That way other people can feel a little bit better. And maybe we can get ahead of what's spreading faster than the virus, and that is fear and social freakout, right? Okay, that is my talk. And I'm going to leave now because it's officially an hour-long video. And that's totally more than enough. So I'll see you later. Bye.